Hey there, midlife mamas. Welcome to the Healthy Lifestyle Habits podcast just for midlife mamas. Because let's be real, this midlife chapter is no joke. Our bodies are different, our minds are different, our hormones are different, and we're trying to figure out who we are after momming for all these years. This empty nest phase is an eye-opener for sure. What worked for us in our younger years is no longer serving us because we have so much life experience, and that's okay. This is a supportive space guiding you through those powerful 1% shifts to help you grow. As we know, health is not a one-size-fits-all, so each week you will learn about different topics, taking away tools and tips to implement. This season, we're going to tackle some of the biggest midlife questions that y'all have had about wellness in this chapter. We're going to be chatting about what is holding us back, where do we find joy, how do we prioritize ourselves through self-care. We're always going to be talking about ingredients, daily toxins, food swaps, breath work, and mindset, just to name a few. There's nothing better than feeling empowered to create the best next chapter. Am I right? After each episode, I hope you feel more equipped and at ease to take a step or two that will allow you to thrive. Whether you're a newbie or an OG listener, I am so glad that you're here. Let's embrace this new chapter and thrive together. Are you ready for all the possibilities? If you said yes, say, I am ready. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Live Life Balance podcast. Today we're going to be having an amazing conversation with Sarah. She's been working in the medical field for the past 27 years as a radiation therapist. She recently made a little bit of a career shift to coach women in menopause after getting a couple taps on the shoulder that she should be doing something different. Sarah brings her expertise as a holistic nutritionist and a menopause health coach, but more importantly, as a woman who is on a mission to share with other women about how powerful and fulfilling this transition can be. Her own journey with weight gain in menopause led her to research what was happening within her body. And she realized that whatever she did in her 30s and 40s to get back into shape after gaining weight failed miserably now that she was 54 and in post-menopause. Her deep dive into the study and talking with other women struggling with menopause weight gain led her to her passion, which is helping women have optimal health in menopause. As well as seeing clients, Sarah runs workshops in her community and co-runs women's retreats on a remote island in Canada. This episode is everything. It resonates with me to my core, and I know that it's going to resonate with many of you. We talk about everything, but mostly we talk about going inward when we're on this journey and how healing that can actually be. So without further ado, let's get into this conversation. Hey everyone. Today we have on Sarah Cormack, and her and I just have met through Instagram, and she works in the menopause space, as you guys heard in the intro. And so I just want to dive into the conversation. Let's get to know Sarah and let's get some wisdom from her, because I know that she'll be dropping some bombs that we can take away. So Sarah, how are you today? Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Robin. It's lovely to be here. Great. Thank you.
If you would just share with us a little bit about your journey and kind of where you started and sort of how you ended up in this space, I would love to hear that.
For sure. Well, I had a career, or I still have a career, as a radiation therapist, working in cancer care. And I've been in that industry for 27 years. And it wasn't really until I was in my mid-40s that something kind of was just tapping at my shoulder saying there's something else. And I really didn't know what that something else was. And so kind of fumbled for many years, trying different things and seeing if I could find the answer to that little tap on the shoulder. And it wasn't until I went through menopause and all the kind of the struggles that I had in perimenopause in my life and my health and my relationships that I kind of stumbled upon working with women in menopause. And it was just really my story and where I was and how I got there and really struggling with my health. Like I thought I was healthy. I thought I knew how to eat. I did a certificate in holistic nutrition, and I thought, oh, I'm going to stroll into this menopause thing knowing exactly what to do. And that was just like the biggest, mistake or whatever. It was just like, no, something else is happening here. And it really took my body, like I just didn't know what to do anymore. And so I used my skills in holistic nutrition, and I worked at doing some menopause training and kind of finding the answers to what exactly was going on in my body.
I think that a lot of the listeners today, along with myself, can really resonate with all of that because, we're going through life, right? And we think we sort of know things. We think we're at least aware, right? We think we like it can't be that bad. I mean, our moms went through it, our grandmothers went through it, but I will say that that wall that you do hit, it, it's a crazy wall, and it's interesting because things just don't work the same.
Right.
What once worked for you doesn't work for you anymore. Your body changes, your mind changes, everything changes, and it's not doesn't have to be such a daunting thing, but because it's not talked about a lot, because when you go to a regular doctor, it's like, their answer is only to put you on a hormone. It's not really to address other lifestyle factors, which are huge, I
Right.
believe,
For sure.
when you're trying to live your best life during this chapter. And then you throw on top of that, your kids growing up and then, moving on. And it's just, there's just a whole lot of, pieces of the puzzle that sort of like blow up, I feel like. And there was somebody who said one time, menopause is like the great reveal. It like brings all the things up. And I'm like,
It
woof.
does.
I mean, literally that stuck. I mean, the minute I heard that, I was like, man, that's
Yeah.
forever ingrained in my brain. So I guess, first of all, thank you for all the work that you do in the radiation side of things because it's so important and it's so necessary. But I love how you felt that little tap and you didn't ignore it, right? It's the whisper that says there's something greater, there's something more for you, there's something different for you. And I think as women, especially around this age, when we get that tap, we just sort of ignore it because everything else is going on at the same time. But I'm glad you didn't ignore it because you're in a space that needs you and needs your voice and your education and your support, really. So once you got into that portion of things, what shifted for you? What did you learn about menopause that allowed you to use some of your, holistic training in nutrition and sort of put it together to make you feel better?
Well, I think there are so many things that came from it, but I guess what really happened was my healing journey and like the great reveal.
Mm.
And I saw everything unfold. Like where I am now, I saw everything when I'm looking back at it that it had to happen that way in order for me to be here today. And I wouldn't change anything that happened because it was just it was almost like an awakening in a sense, like the
Mhm.
great reveal. It just brought up everything that needed to be healed that was really not really dealt with in childhood, or I was always going outside of myself. In my
Mhm.
20s and 30s, I explored, I did lots of things, I traveled, and there was always that the looking outward. But it was really not until my 40s that I kind of was like, oh, there's a bubbling. There's this like I kind of felt like there was an internal kind of little bubbling that needed to be addressed. And it was just like something's needing to be looked at here. So it all came up around in my relationship actually and my health at the same time, like crushing anxiety. And I had no idea anxiety had anything to do with being perimenopausal. And my doctor didn't really know anything about that either. And it was really interesting how that all came together. But it was just really, and now I just have such trust that whatever is happening in my life is really kind of meant for me to go through it and heal another layer, because it is really a coming back to ourselves and a connecting with ourselves in a different way. Now that, like, for many of us that have our families, and like you said, your audience is just tipping their toe into empty nesters and trying to find something that is them again, because I kind of felt like I lost myself in all those years, and I didn't even really know who I was, or it was just like I was on automatic. I was on like this autopilot, and it was going through perimenopause and having all these things come up that was like, oh, okay, like I get this. I'm not really meant to stuff this down and kind of one pill fits all kind of thing. This is gold to mine. And it was just through that journey, through that spiritual journey, that I really came to see it like that.
Yeah. I mean, everything you're saying is giving me goosebumps because it's exactly or very, very similar to what I experienced. And it was, I think, in our society, and when you're going through, the 20s and the 30s, and even like the early 40s, you are on autopilot. Whether you have kids or not, you're either crushing your job at work or you're momming, I mean, it doesn't matter where you are, but when you start losing yourself because we've never been taught to go inside, to go inward, to hear what our body is saying. We have been taught to go external all the time. If
Yeah.
something doesn't feel good, go to the doctor. If something doesn't feel good, ignore it. It's like, no, like listen. And so like listening to your body, if you walk away with nothing else today, listening to your body, and I talk about this all the time, is the most beneficial thing you could ever do for yourself. It is a gift to sit with yourself. It is not comfortable. It can be very uncomfortable, especially when you have suppressed and kind of stuffed down those feelings and those bubbles and whatever, however you want to call it. We all have it, all of us. There's not one person that's going to scaze out of this life without
Right.
dealing with something internal, because we've never been taught to do that. So my hope and my prayer for the future is that if we start to understand and do the work, our children's generation will start a little bit sooner, and their children's generation. Like I was thinking the other day about my mom when she went into menopause, and all I remember about it was she would be hot at dinner, and she'd like flip the air on 50, and then, but there was never, I don't think she ever did internal work. She never, because that wasn't a thing, and it
Right.
wasn't really in the mainstream at all. So feel so blessed that at least we're getting this chance and this opportunity, and I don't take it lightly. And the work that I've done over the last 4 years plus, outside of just, nutrition, movement, that inner work is what transformed me.
Yeah.
It is all the parts and pieces. And that's why I like the whole 1% shift, because we are holistic beings, right? We are multi-dimensional, multifaceted. We've got all different things, but when we're just addressing things 1% at a time, it's not so overwhelming, but it also gives us a chance to do multiple things. So we can do something external and something internal in little small bites, rather than just the external or just the internal, because it's a balance.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
So I'm curious, if you would share with us just one or two things for you that you can remember along that journey that was really like, oh, I had to deal with this in order for this, or a tool that you use, something that tangible, so someone can understand if they've never tapped into this or if they've never gone inward, what does that look like?
Oh my goodness, there's just so much. I think that what really stands out is that the ego, the behaviors that I like, the personality, like the person I thought I was, isn't really who I am. And I like everybody develops these ego behaviors from childhood, like things that we really learned just to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so that understanding is like, oh, that's not actually who I am. I'm more than that. there's a connection to the divine, and that in every moment I can really tap into that because that part is inside of me. And so it was really like for me, my struggles in my health, but not only that, it was like the struggles in my relationship with my husband were really, really challenging. And when I learned that, like, I think it's Viktor Frankl that says, when you can't control your life, the things that happen to you, you look inward and control your reaction to it. And totally flubbed that, but it's just that's what kind of resonated. Is that I'm not only a victim of my circumstances, like I actually have my thoughts are something that are like in the Course in Miracles, I learned that like all joint minds are joined. And so whatever I'm thinking can be felt in that space. And that was a really, really big thing for me because it was like, oh, I can think something. And it's not about manifesting and positive thinking. It's just really about having the thoughts, how your thoughts control your reality or show up in your reality. And for me, I was really frustrated, had a lot of resentment, was very critical, really stuffed things down. Like it was just very unhealthy dynamic between my husband and I. And I blamed it all on him because his kind of thing was very evident. Like I built up a lot of evidence that like he's the problem. And so when I really looked at myself and how I was thinking and responding, I kind of saw a part in how I played in it as well. And knowing that there was never any blame, there's not really that kind of, you don't take blame. It's not about blame, it's about responsibility. And so taking responsibility for how I thought and how I felt and kind of not pointing the finger and seeing this as an opportunity to really heal.
Again, like boom,
Yeah.
like boom, all over the place. So a couple of things. In a book that I absolutely love, one of the things she always says is, are you a victim or are you a victor?
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think we can all learn from that because we all, again, have certain circumstances that we've come from that we can totally say we're a victim from or a victim of. And that is all mind. And what your thoughts are, if you think something, you will find evidence for that all day long.
For sure.
If you flip that to something else, you can find evidence for that all day long. It is so interesting. I think the mind is one of the most fascinating things. If I was 20 again, I would go back and study the brain. I think it's so fascinating.
Me too. I've often said that. Oh my gosh.
It's so wild to me. Opportunities. I love that word because as I've grown and as I've gotten more comfortable going inward and reflecting, my word of the year is pause, and I have found it to be extremely more than I ever thought it was going to be, but extremely beneficial in the moments in which I'm triggered, because old patterns, old triggers, things, it's there for a reason. But now I have a few tools, and so the pausing allows me to say, okay, is this about me or is this about them? But I'm taking it on myself. And like you said, my thoughts that I have, they are felt. If you're in a space with a bunch of people and you're thinking negatively, it's not that you're manifesting negativity, but you do radiate negativity. If you're in a space where you're not as judgmental and you're not having a lot of judgmental thoughts, I feel like the space is a lighter, like the air is lighter wherever you are. Yeah. So I think that's something to really be mindful of, because a lot of times, especially from how we were raised and grew up and without the like tools to, maybe steer a different direction, our thoughts sometimes can be way off. And I also think another fascinating thing just with all of this is how you're talking about anxiety. I think sometimes the other part that happens during this time is you just have wild thoughts. Like your thoughts are like, where did that come from? But it's like pausing and saying, is that really truth? Or is this just something you think? And what the other person, and this is what I often say to my girls too, it's like half the time that we're having these thoughts, the other person has no idea that you're even thinking these things because they're in their own thoughts over here. So if you want to think something, you should always talk to the person and say, I feel like this, and this, and let them respond. Give them a chance to say, well, oh, I didn't mean it that way. That's not how I meant it to be taken. Well, I did not grow up like that. It was, and I didn't grow up in a terrible home or anything, but it just wasn't the way. It was just your parents said something, you listened. There was not a lot of, hey, what do you think of this? That, it was just whatever your parents said you did. And then you didn't and you got in trouble. It was this very cut and dry, right? There wasn't a lot of conversation. And again, like I said, with my mom with menopause, she obviously everybody's going through this. It's just without tools and without people talking about it. And I don't think it's talked about enough. And I think, with women in the workplace, more so now than ever, it is being felt. And there is a ripple effect of us not talking about it. And men don't get it. They don't understand because, and not their fault, they haven't been educated on it and they don't live it. So how would they know? But the brain fog and the some of the real physical limitations that come along with this, if you're not truly present and really understanding that, I mean, it can rock your world. And I think for some business people, people that go to work every day, and people that stay home, you just are like, what is happening in my world? So I love that, you talked a lot about the thought part, because I think that's super important, because when you are learning to kind of reverse your lens inside, it's a lot of conversations that you have to have with yourself. How does this serve me? Does it serve me? Am I showing up in my most authentic, true self? Am I using my voice in a way that communicates my feelings? Like, there's so much.
Yeah. And also, like, I'll just add to that is the voice that you have about yourself, like the inner critic. And, I think we're hardest on ourselves. And really, the quietening the inner critic is such a freeing thing to do, because there's that voice that can always be there and is present, but it doesn't have to be in the driving seat, like it can be
love that.
like, yeah, you can just, all right, I see you, I hear you, and thanks very much, but I've got this.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that is an actual tool, even though it's a scenario. That is a tool that people can use when that voice starts to go a little wild, right? I mean, it is, when I say like having conversations with yourself, I truly mean like having conversations with yourself and talking, if you're driving in the car, talk to that person, and I think it's interesting because, it helps us to also use our voice when we're using our voice with ourselves.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the inner critic with somebody and you're trying to give them some tools besides language tools, what are some of the tips that people, if they've never even like stepped into that, what would that look like for somebody who's new to this?
Well, I think really being gentle with yourself is really important. Giving yourself, I kind of, the should have, would have, could have kind of thing. Like, I don't shoot all over myself anymore. It's like, it's, if it happens, if it's meant to happen in a way, like it's really showing up for yourself with compassion and love for yourself. And I think it's just like I just see, if I was able to tell that to my 16-year-old self, right? Like, we are just so hard on ourselves. And I really think that that's one of the things that I've learned in my 40s and 50s, is just to be more gentle with myself and have more compassion for myself.
I love that. And one of the things I often say to people is, treat yourself like you would treat your best friend. And we always put other people in a different light than we do ourselves. And because we haven't been taught how to do that, I think how you treat your best friend is a good example to look at, to then try some of those things, and again, when you're having that conversation with yourself, when you're about to be critical, ask yourself, would you talk to your friend like that? Would you talk to your kids like that? If the answer is no, then why are you talking to yourself like that?
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing you said a little bit ago was, as things come up, you don't shut them out. You take them as like they're coming for a reason. And I, in my life, have found, again, over the last decade, like certain things repeatedly keep showing up until I see that, right? Till I'm like, oh, here it is again. And then okay, now that I've seen this pattern, what is this that I'm dealing with? And I think being aware is the number one way to start to understand what needs to be reflected upon. And so I actually welcome challenges like that. Now I used to not. I used to get so mad about like, why does this keep happening? But now I'm like, okay, what is the reason that God is repeatedly giving me the same lesson to learn over and over again?
Yeah.
And how can I show up differently now that I'm wiser, now that I'm, wiser, I guess is the only word I would use, but just more aware, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we know more, we can do things differently, right?
Yeah. So one of my sayings is always do something different, because what you're doing isn't working. So I think that's important. Again, a lot of this is new to people because we just haven't grown up in this. And also curious just with the people that you have worked with, because I think I have an idea of an answer, but have you met anybody that doesn't have unlayering to do?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Like it's epidemic. It's really like it's evolving kind of process as well. Like you have to kind of stumble on something in your life, like you, those same kind of lessons were coming up, right? And that's why I think menopause is just so powerful, because it offers so much that we can pay attention, we can listen to our bodies, we can slow down and just think, okay, what is it trying to tell me? So there's a lot of time for reflection and listening and just doing things differently. And it's like I think the Japanese word for danger is opportunity. And so there's lots of things to mine in that, right? There's the opportunities, there's the gold, but it's also that you can have, like, for you to be able to see that why is this showing up in my life? What is going on here, and what's the lessons here for me? And so bringing it back to menopause, there's a lot of things going on in menopause. There's, I had children late in my life. I was in my late 30s, early 40s. So I was like perimenopausal mom, and just kind of, and then the relationship issue, and then, your purpose as a woman, like in life, and when your children are leaving the home, there, and aging parents, in your health, there is just like, it's everything comes at you, right?
Yes.
So the tools, Robin, are just like so important to have things in your toolbox that you can use to help through this time.
Yeah. And I 100% believe that women are very powerful, and we have run a household for however long. And so it's just really about reframing and putting attention and focus on yourself.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
allowing for the same amount that you've poured into everybody else all these years to now, it's not selfish, but to pour into yourself, so that this next chapter of life is equally or better than the last, and so
Amen.
not
Hello, my
letting,
goodness.
yeah, I mean,
Right?
I'm not gonna let something like this take me out.
Yeah.
I'm just not. So,
Yeah.
but what I want to say is, I think that a lot of women are not even aware that they have some unlayering to do.
Yeah.
And it's a scary place to dip your toe into if you're not aware of it yet. But again, back to the 1% shifts, it's just starting somewhere. And once you get started, you're not going to be given something that is like 12 layers under. You're going to be given that very top layer. And once you deal with it, just like an onion, you peel it back a little bit. Yeah. And then the next layer shows up. And so the work is continuous. Health is continuous. Wellness, there's no end to the journey until you're no longer here. So you have to embrace that mindset. And again, I wish and I hope in the future, this can back up quite a bit so that we're educating kids early on what self-care practices look like. What does it look like to manage things that pop up? Mm-hmm. And it's not just about, oh, well, this happened. You're just going to have to move on. It's like, no, we need to actually like unlayer that at that time of their life so that hopefully it doesn't get as suppressed along the way. And I believe it can happen. I think, again, my mind always goes back to education from being a teacher, but it's like, I love education. I love math. I love science. I love all of it. But somewhere in there has to be a larger chunk of self. And, and I know there's total like history buffs out there, and I like history somewhat, not my favorite, but what does it matter about World War II if you are not happy and present with yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I think the education system needs to get on board with 2024. And I know that's a large asking, but I think it's possible. I know it's possible. Anything's possible. Yeah. It is. It's just getting the right voices and the right kind of, attunement done to get it out there, I think. But where we're starting is with the older people, and then hopefully that trickles back to your family, and then that trickles back, it's one step at a time, 1%, right?
So, and we're the models for not just like our family, but for our friends as well, right? Mm-hmm. In our community as well. And so my daughter and my son are really noticing like how I take care of myself, right? Mm-hmm. That's a kind of a model for them, knowing that this is my time for right now. And I just find like such you're stepping into a different version of yourself in your 50s. Like, yes, it's really, really, it's fun and it's powerful, right? Yeah. And it's just like there's unknown territory there, but it's really like I'll share a story. A friend of mine, her mother, when she turned 50, this is years ago, she turned 50 and she was so depressed. And she locked herself in her room. She didn't want to see anybody. She didn't want to acknowledge the fact that she was 50. She was depressed. And it wasn't surprising that she didn't live for very much longer. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that when like 50, I really embraced turning 50. And they're so kind of, like I said, just stepping to something different. The learning is continuous. The wellness is continuous. The healing is continuous. And it's like a new way. And like you said, like our mothers and our grandmothers never had this opportunity, Robin. Like they really didn't have the information, and they didn't have the awareness, and they didn't have the options and that we have today, and what we have access to, the information that we have access to today as well. And so our parents and our mothers and our grandmothers, they did the very best they could with what they had. Mm-hmm. Right. And then this is for us, we're the first generation that is in menopause, that has all this information, that can do things differently and show up differently in our lives, so that our daughters can see that and show up differently in their lives and have a different story. Because like the story in our culture about menopause is very fearful, mm-hmm. and, very negative. And so it's no wonder that women in the Western world and this culture really feel the stigma of that.
Yeah.
right?
I think it's changing. I'm going to say that I think it is shifting somewhat. I
Yeah,
think getting more doctors on board, more gynecologists on board with like how they're handling and information that's given to women that are starting
yeah,
to go through this stage, you know, that's what's going to really start to change because obviously most people for their first, like what's happening, they go to their gynecologist. They're like, what is happening? Or their regular doctor. And then that's the, oh, well, you might be perimenopause, it's like, go get your blood drawn maybe just to see, or this is
hmm,
just part of it, and that's what I think needs to stop, that sentence of this is menopause, like expect this. And it's like, what? Like,
yeah.
no, I'm not going to accept that. So I do want to talk about 50 because I was super excited to turn 50, just like I was to turn 40, but I had no idea. I'm just about to be 51, but the year 50 has been so transformational for me. It's just been another huge step in the direction that, I'm able to show up a little bit differently, which is helping me in challenging situations. And I'm so thankful that I embraced 50. Some people, you're right, they do get that very depressed, negative, and it's like 50 means that you're wiser,
Hmm.
you have more power. It means you've been around the block, you have experience. I mean, that to me is so powerful in how you use it if you choose to use it. So
Yeah,
I want to encourage anybody that's listening today that's, either maybe about to be 50 or is 50. um, it's up to you how you're going to view that time. And one, I jokingly, a couple of weeks ago we celebrated somebody turning 50. And, we were joking. We're like, well, you can't get canceled when you turn 50 because you're 50. And now you can say whatever you want. I'm always like, well, at 50, you can say whatever you want. You're 50. And so that was kind of my thing. And,
that's funny.
it's like, again, how you look at everything
Yeah,
and how you choose those thoughts chooses your reality.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, we could literally talk forever and ever
Yeah.
and ever, but so tell people how you work with women, and what you have going on to support, because I think that people, definitely need to have different, avenues to look into when they're starting down this
Yeah.
journey.
Well, I work primarily with women in menopause that are struggling with their weight. And that was something that was really challenging for me when I gained 20 pounds and the doctor told me that it was normal that women my age gain weight. And it was really a struggle. And I kind of did a lot of in looking into research into why that is. And so I found that a lot of women really struggle with menopause weight all around the middle. And when I found out that that weight around the middle is visceral fat, and that
Mm-hmm.
that impacts your health in ways that we don't really, we're looking at brain fog, we're looking at heart health, bone health, liver health, and as well as energy. And so it's kind of like its own little inflammatory organ. And so I was like, okay, I can put my knowledge with my nutrition together with my experience.
So I want
And
to stop for 1 second just to back up for a second. So when you did your research, because I think people would want to know this,
yes,
what is the reasoning, the scientific reasoning, if you could remember, of why the weight is gained in the midsection?
yeah. Well, mostly it has to do with our hormonal influx, really, like with post-menopause, where the ovaries are ceasing to function. And so we are really tanking on progesterone and estrogen around perimenopause, or actually around menopause and post-menopause. And so you're not really the only estrogen really that you have in your body are with in the adrenal glands and in your fat cells. And so a lot of the weight, because we no longer have estrogen, is all around the middle. And so, but it's kind of multifaceted because it's not just the increase or the decrease in estrogen and progesterone, but it's actually like how we're living our lives and how we are like the inflammation from, cortisol, from stress hormone, from the chronic stress that we have in our life. And estrogen also helps regulate the insulin response. And so we find ourselves, or I found myself, insulin resistant. And so I was kind of it's a combination. It's like all these things kind of boil up together. And it's like a concoction of everything happening at once in your body and the way that we live our lives. And it was so it's kind of multifaceted. There's lots of things that contribute to it, but it's definitely around the time when our estrogen is we're not getting any estrogen from our ovaries anymore.
I love that. And on listening to you say that portion plus the way we live, so that made me think, we have to control what we can control.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
We have to take into account things that are nature's just doing to us, and not that you can't help with that, but there are many, many things aside from that little portion that you can actually work on to strengthen, to balance, to live in a like more, homeostasis type of, less stress, cortisol in check, thyroid, all of the things. Those are all things you can work on through nutrition and lifestyle. And so even if, however you choose to run with the hormonal side of things, even if you choose a bioidentical, you choose synthetic, you choose to do nothing, that's not going to fix it all. And that's what I want people to walk away with today. It is multifaceted. It is not just the hormonal part. And so if your doctor isn't addressing the lifestyle, the nutrition, the relationship, the primary foods is what we call it, plus the secondary, all the food that you eat, it's really just a disservice. And so I just want you guys to walk away today knowing that there are multiple pieces to this puzzle and it's not just one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you work with clients to levelize or to bring back into balance the lifestyle nutrition part.
Yes.
All right. So I want to ask you a question because I know it worked for me, but I'm just curious, what you've learned. Breakfast.
Yes.
Fasting.
Oh.
And whole foods. Just if you want to touch on any one of those, I think.
Okay. Well, I've gone through everything, basically. I tried everything. And what worked for me, now we're not everybody is going to be the same. So
absolutely.
What worked for me was eating 3 meals a day, not skipping out. Like I still, what I do is eat 3 meals a day and stop eating at 7 o'clock at night. For the most part,
sure. There's always life,
right? Like there's life, and then there's kind of, I do what I can when I can. And if somebody's having me over for dinner and they're not eating till 8 o'clock, whatever, I'll eat dinner that. All right. Like it's flexibility, and it's kind of like just giving yourself a break and just living your life and not having these rules that kind of you have to abide by all the time. So I like to eat 3 meals a day and finish eating by about 8 o'clock. Yeah, 7, 8 o'clock.
So I know like a big buzzword, and I've talked to lots of different women about this, is the whole fasting, intermittent fasting. And I really like to break that down for people. It's if you stop eating at 7 o'clock, and you go till breakfast time the next morning, that is considered an intermittent fast. And yes, there are fasting for different reasons. There's fasting for detox. I'm not against fasting, but on a general day, in general life, that's sustainable, stopping at a reasonable hour, and waiting 3 hours before around 3 hours before you go to bed, 2 or 3 hours, give and take. But
exactly.
Having some mindfulness and awareness around how late do you eat before you drop into bed? How does that make you sleep? And what is your next day like? And so if you have a yucky next day, look at what you ate for dinner and look when you ate last. And just sort of, and again, nobody's the same because we're all bio individuals. So we're going to have to tweak things, to what works for us. But I'm the same with you. I don't skip meals. I like food too much.
Yeah, me too.
And I love breakfast. So, but again, my breakfast looks very different than it did 10 years ago.
Oh,
I
for
am very focused on high protein. I'm very focused on getting my greens in the morning, not powdered greens, but real greens. And I'm not against powdery things, but I'm always going to go to the whole food first, unless
yeah,
I'm in a pinch, or I want something additional. But I think, again, people are looking for the quick fixes all the time.
yeah.
And it's not their fault because that's what we're being sold.
Well,
That's what's
that's
marketed to
that's
us.
exactly it, right? Like that's what we've been told.
Because
So
if
it's kind of
somebody had a,
sad.
yeah, exactly. And if somebody, had a commercial where they were standing up with some kale, nobody would buy it. But you stand up with a powder of kale and everybody's buying it. So
Hmm.
it's,
Hmm.
it's just, again, it's just some mindset shifting that has to happen. And it becomes easier the more you do it.
Yeah.
But when you don't feel good, when you've hit the wall, I call it the menopause wall because it does happen. When you have brain fog that's severe, when you just can't even really cope because you're just not functioning properly, it's hard. It's challenging. I'm not gonna say it's hard, but it can be challenging. And that's
Yeah.
why working with somebody, having a coach of some sort, accountability, a cheerleader, even if it's not a coach or a professional, tell your family what you're doing.
Hmm.
Talk about your stuff out loud because they need to also be connected with you, right? And understand, again, from a younger perspective, understand like what is happening. Because they're going to be, if you have girls, they're going to come up through this. And if you have boys, their wife's going to go through this or their daughters or whatever. So it's
Yeah.
like, it shouldn't be taboo to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. My kids know all about menopause and and they're 18 and 14, so
Yep.
they know exactly. And it's the conversation is open, right? The
Yes.
conversation, it's out there, it's happening, and it's really it's just it's the way it needs to be, really.
Yeah,
I never
for
heard
sure.
about anything until I hit menopause. Like I had no
Yeah.
idea what was
A
going
hundred. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it was like the only thing I knew is that people in my family went into menopause early. That's all I knew. And my mom had hot flashes. Those were the only
on. Yeah,
education I had around it until I hit it. And then I was like,
right.
wow, like I'm on fire. I think I'm gonna die. Like this is
Yeah.
horrible. Um, oh, there was something you just said when you had said like your family knows everything. And I think back to the days when my kids were little and I was like running with the tunnel on, with the tunnel vision, you just like taking care of my
Yes.
kids, taking care of my kids.
Yes.
And I did fit myself in, but not in the way like I fit myself in now.
Yeah.
And it's not time wise, it's more mentality, like how I look at things. I'm not going to work out because, it's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to work out because it makes me feel good because
Yeah.
I want to do not look, I want to feel better. So I want to, make sure that my muscle mass isn't deteriorating because that is something huge that happens
Yeah.
during menopause. So if you're
Absolutely.
not a gym rat, if you're not someone who's like a diehard exerciser or whatever you want to call it, athlete, weight training, resistance training, it doesn't even have to be heavy weight, is so important. And I wish I would have known that way earlier,
I
that
know.
that going to the gym wasn't just about getting muscles. It was actually going to help you into these years. And like working out is not my thing, right? And so I didn't know. I mean, I work out, but different mindset totally. And so I'm like, darn, I wish I would have known sooner that that actually is.
Right?
So I'm telling all my 40-year-old friends, like, if you do nothing else,
Hmm.
relax and also, do some kind of resistance training. It'll help you immensely as you enter this crazy chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster, but it's an honor almost. It's allowed us
Absolutely.
to reframing, but it's allowed us to, have our children. It's allowed us, we go through a lot as women, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's a gift if you look at it that way.
Yeah.
And now I have a group of friends that are kind of in it. I have a few that are in post, but some people are in the peri. And whenever something happens, it's a joke now. And we're all like, well, menopause made me say that. It's like, but it's fun because you're not the only one that feels that. It's like we just have to give grace to ourselves, because sometimes when our hormones, just like when you would have PMS, sometimes that happens where you're just like, but it always works out, right? It's always a lesson in everything. All right, I will drop all your stuff, where people can find you on Instagram, any of your courses, what if you're working one-on-one, all of that stuff I will put in the show notes, so that you guys, if you want to visit Sarah, or DM her, talk to her, that's where you can find all of her information. But before we go today, I always like to ask all my guests for a few non-negotiables, things that you have put into place for yourself that allow you to be and show up as your best version every day.
Well, what I've learned is that you need to slow down. I needed to slow down and just be kind of bringing like joy into your life, right? Slowing down and opening up that space for joy. And so that's my non-negotiable, as how do I slow down in my life and enjoy, sit down. We're talking about eating, sit down at the table and enjoy your food, sit down at the table and enjoy your meals, like slow down and just take that time to enjoy. And I always, like, I'm very grateful to live close to the mountains and the trails. So that is my way of slowing down my day, being in nature and taking my dog for a walk. So that's one of my things that I have as a non-negotiable, is being in nature and slowing down, enjoying the good things
That.
in life.
I absolutely love that. And definitely resonates with me. And I think one of the things, again, that people really just dismiss, that's such an amazing tool, is nature. And nature for all things. But nature is just a way to disconnect. It's a way to get in touch with not only yourself, but with, life and just the beauty of it. And again, if you're going to hike and you're missing that, then you're not really looking at it in a way that's serving. You're just sort of looking at, okay, this is the area I'm going to hike just to get my exercise. It's like there's so much beauty in the world that during all the rushing years we miss, but this is the opportunity right now to slow down, pause, and take it all in, because we deserve it.
Exactly.
So
Love
mamas who are listening, who are in this stage of life, about to be in this stage of life, in the post-menopausal, and all of the things that are happening with our children, it's up to us to take control of what we can control, but also it's up to us to do that inward homework and inward exploration, so that we can learn to heal and live our best lives. So Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. I really, I'm just taking away so much goodness from this conversation, and I know that my audience is too. So I hope that you have a great rest of your day. And to everybody else, I will see you next week.
Thanks, Robin.
Hey everyone, my gosh, such a great episode. Sarah was just full of such good wisdom, and I just loved how, she talked about being able to help women, shed some of those extra pounds that get added on, but not just through food. I love how she has the intro perspective that really does a lot of the healing. But so much goodness from this episode. But a few of the takeaways I wanted to just hit home. Self-care, guys. We talk about it all the time. Self-care during this time of life is got to be your best friend. You've got to learn how to de-stress. You need to learn how to go inward and heal some of that stuff that needs that unlayering. De-stressing, take a walk in nature, find something that lights you up. Practices like mindfulness, making sure that you're really dialing into a healthy lifestyle, really does help us journey through this a little bit better. Number 2, small changes equals that big impact. We're always talking about that 1% shift. Do not think you can overhaul your life overnight. It just is not possible. And Sarah, being that awesome menopause expert, even said focusing on those tiny, doable improvements is way more sustainable and more empowering in the long run. So I love that we connected and agreed upon that point. The third thing is everything's connected. We talk about that too. As a whole being, we can't just pick at one part only and just deal with one part only. it's about taking 1% shifts in a bunch of different areas that's going to help you balance out. Whether that's food, exercise, your inner voice, how you speak to yourself is so, so important. But also keeping in mind that holistic approach, zooming out and seeing the whole picture rather than just picking pieces of the puzzle to work on in a singular fashion, I guess. And the last thing is talk it out. Menopause does not have to be such a hush-hush topic. Whether it's venting with your girlfriends, opening up to your partner, communication is key. If you don't have that, find a supportive coach. Sarah would be amazing. Just know that we can talk about these things. And the more we talk about them, the more validated we feel that we have these feelings and that life is shifting. And I think when we can do that and we find that supportive tribe, those empty nest moms or those midlife moms that are going through the same thing, it just really makes such a difference as we journey through some of this chapter. So again, I hope that you guys get something out of this episode that is meaningful and that can help you make those shifts and changes that you're looking for in your life. If you love this episode as much as I did, please share it with people that are going through the same season as you. I know that they can benefit from it too. Until next week, I hope you all have a great week. Take care. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning in to another episode on healthy lifestyle habits for midlife mamas. I hope you found a 1% shift this week to move you forward on your wellness journey. Remember, small changes add up to big transformations. I want to hear what resonated with you. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and rate the show. Your feedback is truly the only way that I know that you're taking away 1% shifts, adding value to your journey. It is also a way for others to find the podcast. My dream is to empower others to create health and healing. And so I would love for this show to spread wide and far. To stay connected, please check out my Instagram and Facebook pages at Live Life Balanced with Robin. Join my newsletter and grab some freebies at livelifebalancedwithrobin.com. And if you're looking to work one-on-one with a health coach, feel free to book a discovery call on my website as well. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your day. It truly means a lot that you are allowing me on your wellness journey with you. Until next time, find peace, love, and light by breathing, being present, and allowing for all possibilities to happen. Have a great day.